I was directing the bus driver. Go ahead, shoot.
At the Summit Point, that brick building, and I think you said it was Wilson's headquarters?
Yeah, that's where the train, the manager, didn't have a railroad, but he still lived there. He had been a railroad employee.
So when they come into town, do they commandeer it? Do they pay them for the use of the house, or how does that work?
No. And I don't, and Wilson had been staying back at the other house that I pointed out as we were on the retreat route, about a half mile east of there. He kind of comes up and he's got his headquarters right out there in front of the house there. He's in combat mode at that point, and he's outside of the house in that position. It's noted his artillery was 150 yards west of that, so that house is a good place to help place where the action happened. The racetrack followed us over here. Dennis here? Oh, okay. All right. All right, so now we want to go to map 15. All right, if you look up at, you got Early in the right-hand corner. You go to the left, you got Warden. Below him, you've got Gordon. Gordon's just on the back side of the hill behind that yellow farm building that I'm pointing at right now. Gordon's position. Gordon's primarily in reserve here as this battle develops. So I'm using this to orient you. And we're probably right about down, we've entered off of the road right near the D and the E on the word depot. So we're kind of looking there. The railroad tracks, see them? I'm pointing off to my right, your left front. There's the railroad tracks. They're gonna turn, make a sharp 90-degree turn where the actual depot building is located and head back to Charlestown. Now, we've discussed the actions of Fitzhugh Lee coming up through Berryville and Anderson coming down up through Summit Point, driving Wilson and Barrett back respectively. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the northern column. And to start with, turn around the map 14, and you've got Jubal Early. Jubal Early is coming in on the main road, Route 51 that we were in. That's the Smithfield Pike, and that's the old 2nd Corps, plus John Breckinridge and his division from Southwest Virginia under the command of Gabriel Wharton. Breckinridge also officially commands John B. Gordon's division here at this battle. Out in front of Early's column is going to be another detachment of John C. McCausland's brigade leading the way towards Charlestown. Now, several miles north of us, on what's known as the Leetown Road, is going to be Lunsford Lomax's cavalry brigade. Lomax had been a brigade, Lomax has a division here. Previous to this, coming out here to the Shenandoah Valley, he commanded a brigade in Fitzhugh Lee's division. It was thought that we're going to take Lomax, the brigade commander from Jeb Stuart's old cavalry corps, and put him in command of all these miscellaneous cavalry brigades that were out here in the valley. As I mentioned yesterday, these valley cavalry regiments were somewhat lightly regarded within the Confederate Army themselves. You know, they were reckless and ill-disciplined. Breckinridge was critical of their performance at times earlier in 1864. So it's thought that Lomax, and again, I discussed yesterday how the two largest, probably the best of these two brigades were effectively ripped apart at Moorfield and demoralized. So Lomax is going to have with him one of those brigades today, and that's going to be Johnson's brigade. And then out in front of him, leading it, is going to be Mudwall Jackson with his Virginians. And the point of the spear is going to be that Major Harry Gilmore. We've heard his name a lot, but he's an aggressive commander, and he's got the remnants of the two Maryland battalions out in front. One of the reasons why is these two Maryland battalions, they are the best armed in terms of cavalry. They have pistols and they have sabers to a much more significant degree. Many of McCausland's and Johnson's men didn't have the type of armament that they needed for mounted operations. They had some swords, some pistols, but most of the men, all they had was an Enfield infantry rifle, which is basically useless for hand-to-hand mounted combat. So Lomax is moving towards Charlestown from Darksville, then on to Leetown. The good thing is in spite of all the shortcomings of the men under Lomax, they're only going up against Alfred Dufier's cavalry division on this day. And Dufier's division's only got about 800 men. A lot of the best troops had been stripped out of it and given to Averill when he was pursuing McCausland's raid. And when it first comes down and joins Sheridan's army during his initial dry run against Jubal A, Torbert looks at it and has his medical directors, inspectors do a review, and he sends this division to the rear for a week to rest and recuperate. It's now been brought forward. Probably not all that much has changed. The horses maybe have rested and eaten, the men might be a bit healthier, but it's more out of necessity that it's brought back in than any major change to this division. So Dufier and Lomax are going to have the junior varsity squads teeing off against each other, and Dufier is going to fall back on a rear guard action on the northern flank until he gets up to the right flank of the 6th Corps. Now we're going to switch in, so we have a stable situation. We know they've stopped Lomax to the north. Anderson is staying at Summit Point, so nothing's going to be happening in that direction. The day is waning on, and Fitzhugh-Lee has been stopped along the Berryville, Charlestown Road at Bullskin Run. So there's nothing's going to happen except what's right here. Early's going to arrive here about the middle of the morning, and by 10:30 a.m., John McCausland's troopers are going to attack the Union pickets from Horatio Wright's 6th Corps. Those pickets were out on this ridge and west of this ridge, and they're going to get driven back by McCausland. McCausland will then, with most of his brigade, the smaller part that's also with Anderson won't be here, they're going to fan out and move in that direction. Another Union skirmish line will be formed on the ridge in immediate front, and they will be pushed back. Now, by later in the morning, Robert Rhodes' division is going to arrive on the scene. And Rhodes is going to come right through this ground where we are right now, and he's going to deploy his division. His division line of battle essentially is going to be along the railroad, and some of the, as it moves down that way, and some of the troops will be along the road on the other side. However, it's important to note, the fighting here is not going to be lines of battle surging forward and attacking. For on the next ridge over, we're set a home known as Locust Hill. You can see that it's almost about the middle of the map there. Locust Hill is also known as the Packet House there. And the wife was one of the descendants of the Washington family. And a couple of the daughters are still in the home while the combat is going to erupt this day. That area is going to be picketed by the Vermont Brigade. And when the commander of the division there, General George Washington Getty, who was stellar commander, probably one of the most underrated division commanders of either side during the entire war. He started off as an artillery commander in 1862 he had like an artillery battalion on the peninsula and later campaigns. But he's promoted to brigadier general and has a division of the 9th Corps at Fredericksburg. He's going to be division commander in the Suffolk campaign during 1863 and won't be part of the Gettysburg. But by the spring of 1864, he's given 2nd Division of the 6th Army Corps, and he's going to show you the stout stuff that he's made of. This Washington, D.C. native with his division is going to hold the vital orange plank in Brock Road intersection on May the 5th, being hit hard by A.P. Hill's corps. And he will, throughout the campaign, the Overland campaign, show his worth. Here again today, he's going to be out there as the fighting is starting, and he's just outside the Locust Hill or the Packet House, and he's with his favorite horse. He just had disembarked from his horse and is talking to some staff officers and a officer from the Vermont Brigade when the Confederate sharpshooters who deploy out on the ridge immediately in front of us, they miss him, but they kill his horse. So the Vermonters are like, hey, we better take cover. So Grant, you see all these deployments of the troops here. He's going to deploy the Vermont brigades. 3 regiments are going to be deployed in skirmish order. The other 2 are going to reinforce them and back them up. While our map shows this being all Vermonters, there's going to be others. There's going to be Pennsylvanians, Massachusetts men, and Rhode Islanders out on this skirmish line here in this area. As the intensity of the fighting ramps up here, Russell's division on the north side of the road is going to send out more regiments in open order. One of those regiments is the 37th Massachusetts Infantry, Colonel Oliver Edwards. Oliver Edwards is the original commander and serving in his brigade at the time. And Edwards' men on that skirmish line, they're going to be armed with Spencer repeating rifles. So they're going to be a force to be reckoned with out there. Ricketts' division will go off and send out sharpshooters farther to the south. But as you see, this line, the Union line, is a solid position on a ridge about a mile east of where we're at right now. And that's where they're dug in and entrenched. The troops that are out here that Rhodes and Ramseur's men are going to be up against are the troops of sharpshooters, primarily Rhodes' division. Just to get ahead of yourselves, in all of this sharpshooting, fighting, skirmishing, fighting going on, Rhodes' division is going to lose 160 men killed and wounded. Totals for the day were about 200. About the rest of those casualties, most of them happened in the Kershaw's division down at Summit Point. So even though there's not surging line of battle assaults back and forth, there's heavy casualties. 275 in the 6th Corps alone. So while we'll be talking about these movements that are stopped here at the Battle of Charlestown, it's important that you understand, the nature of the fighting. This is a prelude to when formations start opening up, more like World War II style, where they're out spread formation. They're not going shoulder to shoulder and moving forward. So it just kind of evolved in that way. The key thing is Sheridan's line is strong, and all of Early's efforts to come in and combine and hit on the flanks and the center at the same time are going to become to nothing on the 21st of August. Primarily, first of all, because of the stout resistance of Wilson at Summit Point, and Merritt at Berryville, and then along the Charlestown-Berryville Road, Fitzhugh back. So, anybody have any questions here from about this stop, this location? Mike?
I'm confused. Is this where the Union were and the Confederates over there, or was the Union over there?
No, remember, okay, so let's go back to your map. So, remember, Union guys are over there, but they're not on the immediate ridge. So when the fighting starts, we'll just go basically, McCausland's going to drive off Union pickets out here with this, and he's going to push them forward. They'll get pushed first onto that ridge, and then they'll be knocked off of that by Rhodes sharpshooters, and they will be on the next ridge beyond that to be the primary Union sharpshooter line. And then, you know, hundreds of yards behind that ridge is going to be this main Union battle line. Where you're at right now, you're about right below the D and the E in the word depot. Yes. So remember, the McCausland swept through here already, and then Rhodes men are going to come through here and deploy. Gordon and Wharton will be in reserve just on the other side of the ridge containing the yellow farm bill. You know, it wasn't clear in the accounts whether it's just McCausland drove them back. So you've got a small picket force. They probably saw, you know, 3 regiments of cavalry approaching, and they start falling back.
275 Union casualties
In the 6th Corps.
Yeah, that's a lot for an entrenched position. Was that due to Confederate?
Well, but again, that's the thing. It's not an entrenched position where the combat's going on. Remember, Getty's put all of his men out. First, the Vermont Brigade, they're all out there in skirmish order. Then all of his brigades, and then Russell and Ricketts, they've all got a heavy line of skirmishers in open order. So it's open order combat, men taking cover behind rocks, behind trees, in gullies, wherever they can. Yes. So, and we'll talk some more about what's going to develop at our next stop here. I'm just trying to set up the main, and we'll talk more about what's going to ultimately happen in terms of the combat.
Scott, what Union unit did their sharpshooters come from, and was there any account of which sharpshooters did the best, and were they picking each other off?
Well, these sharpshooters were mostly the Vermont regiments, and 3 of them were put out in skirmish order to start out the battle, backed up by a couple other regiments.
And whose were the best, Rhodes or the Vermont guys?
Well, they were both pretty good, but the one thing about Rhodes is they had that formally organized sharpshooter battalion in here. In the end, this fight's a standoff. They're gonna, you know, the main positions are gonna hold. There will be some seesaw activity back and forth with the skirmish lines, but the Union troops were really, let's look at it this way. Probably a relatively equal number of men engaging each other out on those sharpshooters. 275 Union, 160 in Rhodes. So just that I think it shows you there the experience that they've had getting out. It was the same guys who were the best shots in here. And here more you're deploying regiments in skirmish order. It's not a designated rep. We're going to call out the sharpshooter brigade. Sharpshooter battalion from the Vermont Brigade. So, and I don't want to discount that too much because there were some actions in the Army of the Potomac developing some regularity in there, but it was nowhere near the development of the sharpshooter battalions that had been formally constituted in the Army of Northern Virginia. Yeah, and even that's little different in how they were used was not always the same. So. All right, so what we're going to do now, any more questions here?
The line here, the more out over here on the left, is that where
No, the Union line, you can't see. That ridge right there. That's Rhodes' line, these sharpshooters, Rhodes sharpshooters going down there. And so as it's going to develop there. We're going to have another stop down there on the road where you're going to, you see where Richwood Hall is at, Mike?
no.
Keep going down
Yes,
from Rhodes Division.
Yep. Mike, that's a map of Pittsburgh.
We're headed down to Richwood Hall next on the road, and I think you'll get a better understanding once we're there.
it's good to give him your phone number. So he thinks it's a great idea. Yes. I'm sure Winston does